Yo guys, what is up? Here we are with another reading video, and today we are on chapter 3 of The Boys Who Challenged Hitler by Philip Hoos. So we are starting to get into the book, so hope you like it, cause good thing is this is going to be a shorter book. It's about I think it's 18 chapters long, 19 if you include the epilogue. And let me know if you want me to do two chapters at once, just even though it'd be longer videos, but we'd finish the book way faster. So let me know in the comments below if you want that to happen. Okay, so without any further ado, chapter 3 of The Boys Who Challenged Hitler by Philip Hoos. Chapter 3, The Churchill Club. In the spring of 1941, Edvard Petersen accepted an assignment to a new Protestant church and moved with the family 150 miles north to Aalborg, a city in the northern part of Denmark called Jutland. Nud and Dens, now 15 and 16, said reluctant goodbyes to aunts, uncles, and cousins, to Langoria Sundays afternoons of card games and family plays, and most important now, to the RAF club. The Petersen brothers pledged to build an even stronger quick-strike sabotage unit in Aalborg. The RAF boys just laughed in their face. "You'll never keep up with us," they vowed. Aalborg, Denmark's fourth largest city, was teeming with German soldiers. The big attention for the Third Reich's war planners was Aalborg's strategically located airport. Within minutes, on April 9th, 1940, the German forces, some parachuting onto the airfield, had secured the airport and seized all the bridges spanning waterways in Aalborg. They immediately set to work building hangars and expanding runways. Wagons filled with troops, many soon bound for action in Norway, raised the dust of Aalborg streets. German officers took over the best homes and hotels in Aalborg. Armed Schulters joined the Danish population in restaurants, shops, and taverns. Before long, German soldiers stationed in combat zones enviously called Denmark the Whipped Cream Front. The nickname suggested that German soldiers had it easy in Denmark, especially in contrast to troops on other fronts where fighting raged. Why the Aalborg Airport was so important. The Aalborg Airport, situated in northern Denmark, was essential to the Germans as a refueling station to reach Norway, which they had to control in order to secure ice-free harbors in the North Atlantic. By controlling Norway, the Germans also opened up a route to transport iron ore for making weapons from mines in Sweden, going through the Norwegian part of Narvik. Grand Admiral Erich Raeder, head of the German Navy, said it would be utterly impossible to make war should the Navy not be able to secure the supplies of the iron ore from Sweden. The Aalborg Airport was therefore one of the most important single assets in all of Denmark. German forces cleverly camouflaged the airfield from attack by British warplanes by carving farm animals out of plywood and scattering the decoys about the grounds. From above, the cows and sheep lying near a green-painted runway suggested a peaceful Danish farm. The Petersen family moved into a drafty, vine-covered medieval structure with a towering loft. Built in 1506, Holy Ghost Monastery, as it was known, was actually a collection of buildings linked by arched passageways. Throughout the centuries, the monastery had functioned as a Latin school, a hospital, a church, and a town library. Now it hosts Edvard Petersen's Danish folk church and provide living quarters for the Petersen family. There was not enough money for electric heating, so each morning Margaret Petersen rose before dawn to light the monastery's 7 coal furnaces. As she paddled down the coal-tiled hallway carrying her candles, faces of angels, frescoes painted centuries before, peered down from vaulted ceilings above. Hands from the 16th century had scratched their initials into the monastery's brick walls. Oh, shoot, I think I skipped. Oh, yeah, I did. Oops. There we go. Nud and Jens moved their belongings into adjacent rooms on the second floor. Drawing back his curtain, Nud looked out on rows of fresh, polished German roadsters lined up on Badolfi Square outside the Aalborg post office. The vehicles were protected only by a single uniformed guard. If ever there was a perfect target, thought Nud, there it was. They enrolled at Cathedral School, a college prep that educated the sons and daughters of the city's leaders. Hundreds of students rode their bikes to school each morning. The young cyclists were sometimes led by an absent-minded math teacher who became famous for signaling left turns and then turning right, causing massive pile-ups. Though Nudd and Jens were eager to resume sabotage activities in Aalborg, they had to move carefully at first. They were pro-German students and faculty member at Cathedral School. It took time to get to know people. Which students could they trust? How to tell? Excuse me. I should bring water. Nudd Peterson. You couldn't tell who you could count on to join a sabotage unit. No one but Jens and I had any experience. We knew that someone who talks big in a room can panic in the field. My first two friends at Cathedral School were Hedge Milo and Egil Astrup Fredrickson, both in my grade. We had classes together and started hanging out after school, sometimes at the monastery. Egil was a sharp character, always well dressed, talking loud and laughing louder, good with the girls. His dad owned a flower shop in the middle of town. Helge, yeah. We're going to say it's Helge. Helge came from a well-to-do family in the neighboring city of Norsberg. His father managed a chemical factory. After a while, I thought I could trust them enough to tell them about the RAF club and to confide that Jens and I were interested in starting a similar sabotage unit in Aalborg. They wanted in. So, one afternoon, as tryout, that's interesting grammar, we three got on our bikes and rode off to cut some phone wires to German barracks. The barracks were in a forest, and naturally there were German soldiers all around. Both Egil and Helge panicked once we got close. Please turn around, they begged. Let's leave the wires for another day. So we did. I could understand. Sabotage gets some getting used to. On the way out, we pedaled past 4 German soldiers flirting with a Danish woman, and Egil and Helge shouted out an insult as they sped by. They called her a field mattress, a slur for a woman who sleeps around with soldiers. Problem was, my classmates were in front of me and had already passed the Germans, but I hadn't reached them yet. As I whizzed by, they took off after us and soon had us surrounded, pinned down, bayonets drawn. They could have easily run us through on the spot. Somehow we talked our way out of it, and they let us go. German soldiers were everywhere in Aalborg, in the city, in the forest, at the waterfront, thick as flies. Some attended Nudd's father's church on Sundays. He struggled with the idea of giving Nazis communion. At Cathedral School, the gym was converted to barracks for about 50 German soldiers. When the girls from the school exercised in the yard, the soldiers hung out at the windows, whistling and jeering at them. Nudd Peterson. One day, a German officer walked across our schoolyard during our outdoor time. I went over to confront him and informed him he had no business here. We started shouting at each other as boys and soldiers gathered around. Then our rector came flying down the stairs to push me away, shouting, "You idiot! What are you doing? Get back in your classroom!" Nobody blamed him. As head of the school, he had to do it, or there would have been much worse trouble. Before Christmas, 1941, a single conversation changed everything. We were in Jens' room at the monastery. It was Jens, me, and 4 of my fourth form middle A classmates: Egil Helge, Mogens Thomason, son of Aalborg city manager, and Morgan Fidrelip. A pale, pointy-faced classmate who rarely spoke was known as the outstanding physics student in our class. 2 of Jen's classmates were there, too. A boy named Sigurd, ranked number 1 academically in their class, and Preben Ollendorf, a bit of a loudmouth whose dad owned a tobacco factory. We had just gone out shopping for Christmas presents for our teachers. We were in a great holiday mood, all of us tampering our pipes, laughing about girls, having fun. But as the conversation snapped back to the German occupation, the conversation snapped back to the German occupation of our country. You couldn't go 5 minutes back then without returning to the topic on everyone's mind. The talk turned dead serious. We leaned forward and our voices lowered. We angrily discussed the newspaper articles about the execution of Norwegian citizens and the slaughter of Norwegian soldiers who resisted the Nazis. Norwegians were our brothers, we reminded each other, our good neighbors who had the courage to stand up. By contrast, our leaders traded with Germany and sought to placate the Nazis. Here was the discussion I had longed for. I was thrilled to be with Cathedral students who felt as my brother and I did. These were guys who stayed up like us for the nightly radio broadcast from England. The more we talked, the angrier we became. It was absurd. If you accidentally bumped into a German on the street, you were expected to strip the hat from your head, lower your eyes, and apologize profusely for disturbing a soldier of the master race. All of us had listened to them braying their idiotic folk songs in the streets. All this was outrageous, But would anyone do anything about it? Average Janes hated their occupation and occupiers, but ask them to resist and they would say, no, it cannot be done. We will have to wait. We are not strong enough yet. It would be useless bloodshed. The air was thick with our tobacco smoke by the time we laid the proposition on the table. It was the same vow Jens and I and the others in the RAF club had made back in Odense. We will act. We will behave as Norwegians. We will clean the mud off the Danish flag. Jens and I opened up and told our classmates of our sabotage activities with the RAF club in Odense. We left with a bounty on our heads, we told them. Discussion grew heated. The older boys, Sigurd and Preben, wanted nothing of it. You're crazy, they said. The Germans will wipe you out in a day. There'll be nothing left of you. But we younger boys were determined to give ourselves a country we could be proud of. Together on that snowy afternoon, we middle-aged classmates, along with Jens, resolved to form a club to fight the Germans as fiercely as the Norwegians were fighting. We would take the resistance to Aalborg. We would call ourselves the Churchill Club, after the great British leader Winston Churchill. Jens volunteered to research the organization of a resistance cell and give us his recommendations. Same time, same place tomorrow. Preben and Sigurd vowed not to leak word of our meetings to anyone. Already transformed from the cheerful holiday shoppers we had been an hour before, the Churchill Club stood adjourned. The next day after school, none of the other boys stomped the snow off their boots and tromped into Jens' room in the former priest's wing of the monastery for the first Churchill Club meeting. They draped themselves over a padded sofa and pulled the heavy wooden door shut. Nod took his position on a chair in the front of the door to listen for approaching footsteps, and sure enough they came. Followed by a heavy pounding at the door, Nod pulled it open and blinked out at a small, blond-headed boy who introduced himself as Borg Ollendorf, Preben's younger brother. Preben had told him about the meeting and he wanted in. No, he didn't go to their school, and yes, he was younger by a year, but he hated the Nazi swine as much as any of them, and he hated Denmark's official response even more. He stepped past Nod and tossed a bulging tobacco pouch onto Jens' table. Help yourself, he said. He was willing to bring to the club a steady supply from his dad's tobacco company. That was powerful. Nod closed the door and sat back down. Borg slid onto the couch. Nod Peterson. That afternoon, Jens laid out a plan for our club. The model turned out to be very much like professional resistance units later in the war. Even though there were only a few of us to start with, we would divide our work into 3 departments: propaganda, technical, and sabotage. In time, our organization would grow. The propaganda department would paint up the city of Aalborg with anti-German messages to show that resistance was alive. Since we had no stencil machine or mimeograph to reproduce flyers, our first weapon would be paint. We chose the color blue. Striking quickly from our bicycles, we would smear the beeping word Vermagamer, which meant war profiteer, on the stores and homes and offices of Danes who were known to be Nazi sympathizers, and then pedal away like bleep. We would expose them. We made our own sign of that day, an imitation of a ridiculous Nazi swastika. Our tilted cross had arrows shooting out of the top of the arms, like thunderbolts. Here is a symbol of a revolution against the Nazis, our lightning bolts proclaimed. This flame of the rebellion kills Nazis. We would apply our trademark blue messages to polished black German roadsters that lie in the streets. We would add cheerful streaks of blue to the drab German barracks and headquarter buildings. Our inside was also a death warning to the 4 chief Nazi criminals: Hitler and his 3 top henchmen, Hermann Göring, Heinrich Himmler, and Joseph Goebbels. The technical department would produce bombs and other explosives. We vowed to do serious damage to German assets in the city, especially rail cars filled with airplane parts. We would wipe away Nazi smugness and awaken the Danish people. And Mogens Philip, nicknamed the Professor, we had a unique asset for the technical department. He was so brilliant at physics that the school had given him a key to the physics lab. In the coming weeks and months, the professor would steal heaps of chemical materials to combine into explosives. We nervously took turns helping him mix the ingredients. He spent a lot of time concocting nitroglycerin for bombs. Once he accidentally spilled the components during a meeting. It was very lucky for us it didn't explode. But we knew we needed weapons, and until we could steal an arsenal, we would have to make some of them ourselves. The professor was the man. The sabotage department would conduct the on-the-ground field work of the Churchill Club. Of course, by being in that room on that day, everyone pledged to commit acts of sabotage, mainly destroying the Germans' assets and stealing their weapons. I naturally gravitated towards sabotage work. I was inclined towards bold action. Jens was more of a planner, though, a very brave one. I wanted to make problems while he wanted to solve them. There was a fair amount of friction between us. We competed at everything. After a heated debate during our first meeting, we decided to form a fourth section, which we named the Passive Department. This would consist of schoolmates who were not willing or brave enough to attack in the field, but would help us in other ways, such as raising money or developing support. For example, one classmate was the son of a paint manufacturer. In the coming weeks, once we had really gotten going with the propaganda work, the student mentioned in a casual conversation that the police had visited his dad's factory, seeking a match between the blue paint being slapped all over Alberg and the company's products. I took a risk and told him about the Churchill Club. I invited him to join. He declined. He said he'd like to help us. After that, he gave us all the blue paint we needed in 10-liter batches. Before long, we had 10 passive members in all. We knew that every time we took in someone new, we would risk exposure. But we felt we had to take calculated chances. We needed people. We concluded our first organizational meeting by agreeing to a few general principles. No adults must know of our activities. We would only trust each other. No guns in the school. That is, if we ever got any. Anyone who mentions the name of the club to an outsider would be immediately banned. And finally, the most important rule. To be an active member of the Churchill Club, one has to commit a serious act of sabotage, such as stealing a German weapon. The reason for the last rule is simple. One who got caught stealing a German weapon stood a good chance of being executed. Risking this, everyone would have a serious investment in the club's work. This rule discourage anyone from telling authorities about the club because that person too would be incriminated. From a legal point of view, we would all be guilty together. We would continue to be in after school in Jen's studio. We would begin by taking roll and then go out on patrol. We divide the city up into sections, patrol on bicycles, and meet back at the monastery to discuss opportunities, then strike if we had anything. We would become daylight crime specialists. Since most of us had family curfews and couldn't be out past dark, no problem. Everything was guarded more closely at night anyway. The enemy was vulnerable to daytime strikes, and if we needed to work at night, we would tell our parents that we had formed a bridge club. We could say that we were going out in the evening to play cards at the home of only one of us who didn't have a telephone. As darkness gathered outside the monastery walls, an hour grew late. I got up, pulled the chair from the door, and said goodbye to my new mates. Today we were born. Tomorrow we would act. And that is the end of chapter 3. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a big thumbs up, comment down below, and don't forget, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next video.